turn on to the next one. Now, the figurehead in the Puerto Rican Art Workers Coalition was an artist by the name of Rafael Montañez Ortiz, who is the founder of el Museo del Barrio. Rafael Montañez Ortiz, when he was at before he was at the Art Workers Coalition, was already very well-renowned artist, but he was known as Ralph Ortiz. And when I interviewed him, we talked a little bit about that, and he was very explicit in having grown up here in New York in the he was born here, I believe, 1932. So he in Brooklyn, and then they moved to the Lower East Side. And he told me a lot about what it was like to be a Puerto Rican student in the New York school system. And the stories were very heartbreaking because he was discouraged from being an artist. He passed the test to go to Music and Art High School, and the guidance teacher said, no, you can't go there. Just said no. And that experience really molded him, that and other experiences of gangs in El Barrio really molded him. And he decided to go to be an arts educator as a result of those experiences, as well as create, he was part of the founding of a genre of art called destruction art, in which this is a destroyed piano. This I believe is in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art. The Museum of Modern Art certainly has a mattress that he would burn and take out the stuffing, and that was sculpture. So it was, instead of making art, it was unpacking objects and remaking them. And he believed that that kind of work was like a catalyst to remove violent impulses from the psyche. So he had a pretty deep and long understanding of like the human psyche. And he's also a founder of performance art. He used to do this kind of destruction in his studio for himself, and then afterwards he began doing them as public performances, often with some parts of the audience joining in. And he really felt that if we did this kind of performance, it would eventually rid ourselves of the need to act upon our violent impulses in real life, and i.e. the war. He would destroy pianos. He would sometimes kill chickens. So it was very far-sighted work for the early 1960s, and he was definitely considered part of the avant-garde. But when you read Rafael Montañez Ortiz, it's a very clear distinction between who Ralph Ortiz was, which was part of the Judson Church avant-garde Fluxus movement, and then as a result of the Art Workers Coalition, and also his own desire to redress what happened in the past. He worked as a teacher at the Music and Art High School, and it was during that time in the late 60s when there was a push for bilingual education and Black and Latino studies in the school curriculum, that the superintendent of his high school said, could you create a Puerto Rican studies program for El Barrio? And he said no. He said, I don't want a program, I want a museum. And so El Museo del Barrio was actually begun with money from the public school system, and was under the auspices of the public school system for the first 5 years. So,
is there still a link or not?
No.
No, because you know what? I had to attend conferences from the DOE there. It just made me think.
No, I mean, but it was. I mean, originally,
it was.
In other words, in contrast to practically any museum in New York City, including the Studio Museum, which also came out of some of the protests of the Art Workers Coalition, but the Studio Museum began with artists, but also some trustees from the Museum of Modern Art. El Museo del Barrio came completely out of Artists Initiative and the Neighborhoods Initiative, to create this. And it's not really until the last 20 years that we've had major corporate donors to the museum. So it's always been, the root of it is in the community, and in really thinking differently about how a museum is run. Actually, in my book, I discuss how the early history of El Museo and how they tried to run it was very much part of what the Art Workers Coalition believed in, which was that 50% of the artists, the staff should also be part of the Board of Trustees, which we found out later is actually illegal. But the art, but at that time, art, and the staff should primarily be artists, and there should be a strong connection between the site of a museum and the community around it.